Hi, you guys. As we're taking a really deep dive into understanding pain and labor, I want to talk about one of the questions that pretty much every single mom that I've been with through labor has asked me, which is this: if it feels like this now in the early part of labor, what is it going to be like later? What is the most painful part of birth? Well, we're going to dive into that question because as you learn about how amazing your body is, it will bust through all of your beliefs that birth has to be painful and that it's going to get worse as it goes. Birth is physiologically sound and you can trust your body. Let's look at what is happening as you give birth. Because this little baby has to get out of your body for you to give birth. And it is totally possible. And not only is it possible, but you are designed for that work. Now, most women know, or most people know about dilation, that during labor, your cervix down here at the bottom has to open from 0 centimeters to 10 centimeters before you have your baby. But you guys, that is just the beginning of the changes that are taking place as you labor. And I hope by sharing this information about all the different changes, you see that the work you're doing is productive and that it's creating changes, and that you can trust that even if this number from 0 to 10 isn't going up as quickly as you might want it to, that there's likely a lot of other changes that are taking place. And so you can stay in a place of like knowing that your body is doing the work that it's supposed to do. Okay. So let's talk about the 6 changes that take place as you go through labor. The first is that your cervix has to change its position. It begins pointed backwards toward your back, and as you progress labor, your cervix moves forward to face the front. This helps it so your baby can come, obviously, down and out. Then next, your cervix has to ripen or soften. It goes from being kind of hard like this, like the tip of your nose, to being a lot more soft, like your chin. And you know, obviously, that passing through something hard is more difficult than passing through something soft. Something hard is more likely to break. Something soft, it's just going to kind of move out of the way. And the same with your cervix getting really, really thin. It's called effacing. It gets thin and it gets really, really stretchy, kind of like the elastic of a balloon, where it can stretch a lot without any damage happening. And you'll hear this measured as being like 10% effaced or 80% effaced. When you reach 100% effaced, your body is ready for your baby to move through your cervix. Now, your cervix, after all of that happens, or sometimes it kind of happens at the same time, your cervix is going to go from that 1 centimeter to 10 centimeters dilated. 10 being the goal where your baby is ready to come into the world, right? But then we have to talk about your baby getting ready for birth too, because they're all squished up here in your uterus and they need to find their way out. So all babies have to rotate during birth. They turn and they tuck their heads, and their heads have all these, the bones in their skull actually have to mold and change their shape a little bit so that they can fit through your pelvis. And then the last thing is just your baby moving down. Your baby starts out pretty high. Most babies, if you're just walking around during pregnancy, will be at what's called a +3 station. And as time goes by, your baby's going to come down a little bit and down a little bit and down a little bit. they're going to keep coming down until they're at a -3 station, at which point they're basically crowning and are ready to be born. We'll talk about how all of this goes during labor, what happens later. But for now, I just want you to understand that there are a lot of changes happening as you labor. And it doesn't happen all at once. And it doesn't necessarily mean that the work you do later on is necessarily harder or more painful than the work that you do at the beginning. So many moms have the question, is pain going to get worse as it goes? What's the worst part of labor? Well, I made you guys a little chart to talk about what is actually happening during labor. And you can see, let me see if I can get this pointer up here. During labor, early labor is kind of long. Active labor is a lot quicker, a lot more productive. You'll see most of the dilation happening. Transition, you go from 8 to 10 centimeters really, really quickly. And then you're pushing and boom, you meet your baby. So let's talk about if pain follows the same line, starting pretty easy, getting more intense, getting crazy intense and pushing, and it feels so overwhelming. But that's not really how it goes, because your body is made to handle this work. If you think about the work you do every day, does it hurt to walk to the door? No, because you have built muscles to be able to do that. And similarly, your body has built into it systems that support this process. So let's talk about what that looks like. The first thing that we need to talk about is oxytocin. Oxytocin is a hormone. It's created in your brain. It actually leads your birth. It causes your contractions. But its main function is to help us feel good and calm. It's called the love hormone, the bonding hormone, and it facilitates every single part of birth. After birth, it has some really cool things it causes as well, such as warming your body up, making your milk drop. It's intrinsic to sex, lovemaking, giving birth, nursing a baby. You see tons of oxytocin in all of those places, right? What's happening with oxytocin? Well, and I apologize, I drew these by hand and I'm not an artist, I'm a doula, but this is what your oxytocin is doing. During labor, it increases, and it increases, and it increases, and it increases. And it peaks about an hour after you've given birth. It peaks at levels higher than you will experience at any other time in your life. You guys, this is your feel-good hormone, your love hormone, your bonding hormone. It will facilitate your birth and will help relieve pain. And it doesn't end there, you guys. Next, we have endorphins. Endorphins help us feel really good and positive, even when you're working really hard. Like if you think about a runner who loves running and comes back with a runner's high, it feels good to be part of that work, right? That's the power of endorphins. During labor, your endorphin levels rise with every single contraction, especially in the second part of labor, in the active labor. And they are highest just after birth. And you guys, get this, they will be in your body for more than 2 weeks after you give birth. That's why so many moms come out of birth with this feeling of like a birth high, or just feeling like, wow, I did that. That was incredible. And it was remarkable. In fact, even other people in the room with the mom mirror this endorphin rush. It's so, so, so cool. One thing I want to point out for both the oxytocin and the endorphins is that You get more of these if you're doing a natural birth. But that's not to say that they don't still benefit you, even if you have an epidural or a induction. It's just a little bit less. All right, so with your endorphins, same thing. They are just rising to levels like out of control high as your labor progresses. So yes, your workload increases, but also so does all the hormones that support you feeling good and happy and positive during this process. But it's not a walk in the park. I know that you guys have heard stories of excruciating pain, and you might wonder, okay, so we've talked about that a little bit, but how does that actually work? The adrenaline, when that comes into the picture, which is your fight or flight, at some point is a natural part of labor. As you're switching from dilating and your baby coming down and switching to all these things changing in your body so that you're ready to give birth and pushing, you get a natural flush of adrenaline so that you will be alert and awake and have energy when you meet your baby. But you can see that in this little red line over to the side. A little bit of adrenaline at the right time supports your birth. But if you have a lot of adrenaline, a lot of fear cascading through your body during birth, two things can happen because of that. One, if you have a lot of it can stop the production of the oxytocin, of the endorphins, and it can even go so far as to stall your labor. If you have just a little bit of adrenaline or fear, unfortunately, it can block the receptors for the oxytocin and the endorphins so that you still have the work of labor, but you're not getting as much pain relief from that natural system. And that happens to most moms during birth who don't know that they really need to prepare their brain and prepare their body to accept and work with and stay calm during labor, because that is really a skill that you develop. And preparing your brain and changing the neurochemical makeup of your brain and your ability to cope and handle stress makes a big difference to how much pain you feel during labor. In an ideal world, in a perfect world where all of these hormones are flowing perfectly, you're being flooded with oxytocin, your endorphins are off the chart. You guys, pain relief from that cocktail is 18 to 33% more powerful than morphine. Your body has built in the craziest amount of pain relief from the labor process. But we know that not every mom has this, right? And you know that I would never leave you saying, you need this, but most moms don't have it. So what are we going to do about that, right? Well, the fact is that you have so much experience with this hormonal process. You have so many skills, so much knowledge, so much experience that will transfer into your birth process. And let's find that now. Right now, where we find that is by looking at intimacy, because sex teaches us so much about birth. Because you see, the things that drive really positive, good sex are your oxytocin, your endorphins, and adrenaline stops that from being a good and positive experience in intimacy, and it will stop it in birth. We know that. It's unquestionable. And birth, most of us don't know that. It's a natural extension of what has come before. Now, the things that will give you pleasure during birth are very similar to the things that are going to give you pain relief during labor. As we go through the stages of labor and how to cope with labor, you will see that movement, sound, touch, those are the things that are going to help you in the moment move through and release the pain. Physiologically, very similar things happening in your pelvis, right? Your blood flows to your pelvis, your heart rate is going to change, your breathing patterns are going to change, and in birth, you're going to have contractions and a baby. And during sex, and your brain during both of these, during sex and during birth, well, you can't use your active brain to control either process. You have to let go, and you have to let your more primal systems, your limbic system, take over, right? So I just want to share this because you have these skills and you can transfer them into your birth. You know how to quiet your mind. You know how to find that more primal place where you're working with your body instead of staying up here locked in your mind. And let's go one step deeper to what makes birth feel safe for a woman. Same thing that we all need for a deep sense of intimacy. We need to feel secure. We need a lot of care and attention. Consent is so important. And then internally, we need to be willing and ready. If we don't have all 5 of those pieces, it's going to be a more difficult journey. We're going to be more vulnerable than we need to be, right? So let's look at these and see what we can do to build the safest, most secure, most positive birth possible. First, a sense of security. I remember thinking when I gave birth the first time that every hospital was the same and there was a standardized care for women across the board. I was wrong. One big mistake that I made was I went to the hospital that was close enough I could walk to it instead of looking up and becoming an informed consumer and finding the safest hospital near me. Some hospitals have C-section rates for first-time moms as low as 7%, and others have first-time healthy mom C-section rates as high as 70%. Same women, same risk factors, totally different results. Take a moment and look up the hospitals in your community and find out which one is really the safest for you. You can do that right here. Now, if you're doing an out-of-hospital birth, that's great. Out-of-hospital births can be so incredibly rewarding, and they are safe, especially when you have a midwife and an experienced birth team around you. But you still need to ask your midwife what her C-section rate is and what her transfer rate is. Ideally, her transfer rate should be under 20%. You have to do a little bit more direct asking, but make sure you ask the questions so that you can be an informed, good consumer of your healthcare products, of your healthcare team. Next, the feeling of safety and security. Sometimes when we go into a place like a hospital, it can feel a bit overwhelming because it's so new and we're used to associating hospitals with sickness or danger, not really normal events. So bring a few things that make you feel good and warm and secure and safe, whether that's hanging up some affirmations or pictures or putting some candles around your bath, bringing a cozy blanket or a warm pillow, picking out some music that you love, and definitely bring some slippers because it's cold and your feet will get cold and you don't want to take socks on and off. The ones with the little grippies are best for the hospital. Building that environment, just like you would build a romantic evening, bring some things that help you build the feeling of peace and safety and happiness. Now let's talk about care and attention, because this makes such a big difference when we are thinking about how do we stimulate oxytocin and endorphins. Some of it will just come about naturally, but I find that partner support for moms really kind of falls in 3 categories. One, being a coach and helping a mom see where she is now, where she's going, what choices she can make, what she can do in the moment. 2 is a teammate, which is being there with her, offering counter pressure, holding her close, getting her food and drink, and just really, really being a part of the process. And 3 is being the 6th man, which is being present and focused and offering words of support and encouragement, and literally being the person to lean on through the process. Now, birth can be a lot for partners. You guys have such a big role to play because birth, it's not like a 1 hour thing and then you're over. Often it spans the course of a day, sometimes 2 days if you're considering that early labor where contractions are starting and stopping and things are here or there or a little bit confusing. So if you're a little bit worried about being able to provide constant care and attention and you don't want to get burnt out yourself, consider a doula. Doulas provide that care and attention, encouragement, support, both emotional and physical, and they also bring some expertise about what is happening, what is normal, what is not normal, and what are the right actions to take at a specific time. Having a doula at your birth has been shown to shorten the time you're in labor, reduce your risk of interventions and surgical birth, and help moms experience less pain, less anxiety, and less fear through the process. So if you're trying to build that feeling of feeling secure and making sure that you have enough care and attention that you can be present and calm in the moment, having a loving partner and a doula working together to support you is really the ideal. Next is to know your options. You cannot give consent if you don't know what's happening. And you also don't ever want to be in a place where you're being surprised by the options presented or feeling like you're not able to make an informed decision because everything is moving too fast. You're in the process of labor and you're put on the spot, right? So in one of the upcoming lessons, we'll go through your birth plan. We'll talk about the pros and cons of each decision you'll be asked to make, could possibly be presented with, and help you understand which one is right for you. That way you can give your consent or you can easily say no and have very educated and respectful dialogues and communication with the staff around you. Next is your readiness and willingness. Now, I know we all come to birth with different emotions towards it. Some of us want that goddess experience where we are just doing everything naturally, and some of us just want to go to the hospital and get an epidural, and both of those are really great plans. The trick is knowing what you want, what your desires are, and helping to build that internal capacity so that you are both ready and willing for the birth that you are going to be a part of. So let's circle back to the beginning where we asked, what is the most difficult part of labor? Well, it's not one specific part. The truth is, when labor is difficult is when your stress levels rise above your ability to release them. And this is in different places for different women. And it's my job to help you build your confidence and your capacity so that you don't find yourself in this situation. So that's why next we're going to talk about building your brain for birth, how you can actually hack your brain so that the adrenaline can be cleared from your body quickly and easily, and your body is used to producing that oxytocin and the oxytocin receptors and the endorphin receptors and the endorphins so that you can really, really be supported at a high level by your body's natural hormonal cocktails throughout birth. All right, so let's talk about what you can do to have all that natural pain relief through your birth. We'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.